This is 10 beginner tips for Logic Pro X. I found that there were a lot of valuable videos on YouTube about tips and shortcuts for Logic Pro X, but nothing really tailored to the beginner. If you're just starting out with Logic, maybe you've come from GarageBand or whatever. Here are 10 beginner tips that I think will help improve your workflow and just make you a lot more productive in Logic. I'm Charles Klein, indie musician and producer. If you're making music and want to get that music heard, then why don't you subscribe to this channel, because that's what this channel is all about. Stick to the end of the video because I'm going to just name 2 other bonus tips that I use every day inside Logic. I'm going to do some shortcuts here and there, and I'll always put up like the shortcut code, I guess, on the screen so you know what it is. Everyone should have their advanced editing on. So we're going to go to our audio settings now, and how I'm going to get there is going Command comma as a shortcut. And this is going to bring up our preferences. We're going to go to the over here with the gear here to advanced, and we're going to want to have this on show advanced tools. If you just started Logic, you can see right when I click that off and I've exited this, there's not a lot of things happening. It's slim, it's clean, it actually looks like GarageBand in a way. And watch when I press this, you're going to see a lot of different things populate, and that's just going to have much more available features for us to use, and we'll dive into some of that right now. Tip number 1 is to use the tools available in Logic. The tools are located at the top here. We have a left click tool, a command click tool, and a right click tool. You will likely only see the left click tool and command click tool. If you would like to have a right click tool, that is in settings. So if I open up command comma to get the settings, and I go to general under editing, you can see that we have right mouse button, and we have different options, whatever you want your right click to be. I have it on is assignable to a tool. You can also get to these tools, any of these tools, by pressing T on your keyboard. So if whenever you press T, no matter where your mouse is, so for example, if our mouse is here, that grid will show up right where the mouse is. And then you can scroll down to choose a tool, and that will be in your default left click tool. So if I go to scissors tool, now this is scissors. If I press T again and go back to pointer, now I'll have pointer. So we can also just be using the left click tool and doing T on our keyboard and just scrolling down. And you can see, as I was saying, the grid shows up right where your mouse is. So if my mouse is over here, the grid will show up there. So you can get comfortable with the muscle memory of like knowing where the tools are. For example, if you know you want pencil tool, you can just T and drop down your mouse. If there are a few tools that you like to use regularly, that's why you have different tool options here. That's why Logic gives you the option to quickly have a command tool with your thumb on your keyboard, a left click tool and your mouse, and a right click tool. An example would be if I wanted to cut this really quickly, I could click and drag to over here, right click to cut, and then command to fade. So that would be some type of an example workflow using these tools really quickly. If I didn't do that, if I command Z this just to undo, and if I just use one tool, then I would have to go over here, I would have to press T and go to scissors, I would have to cut it, then press T again to go to my fade tool, and I would fade it. Much less productive than using the tools available to you. What I would recommend is start with the left click tool, having your pointer tool, and leverage the marquee tool and the scissors tool. These types of tools allow you to really, the marquee tool specifically, to like highlight pieces of audio and then drag them somewhere else. It's kind of like scissors in a way. Whenever you make a square of something, it's like cropping that thing. And then you can click in and it's cropped that for you. So it's a handy tool as well as a scissors tool because you can cut things. And when you're editing, you will be cutting things a lot. When you're mixing, you might be fading things a lot at the end of the mixing process. So depending on what stage you're in while making music, you will be using different tools. And that's when you would go up and switch the tools in your command tool or your right click tool or your left click tool. Okay, let's command Z this and then continue with tip 2. Tip 2 would be use the shortcuts available in Logic. For example, an easy one would be if you want to add a new software instrument. Instead of going track, new tracks or tracks, new software instrument, just type in Option Command S. So you could just be down here and go Option Command S, and now we have a new software instrument. We could do it multiple times, Option Command S, Option Command S, Option Command S. Now I have 4 new software instruments. Quick way to delete all those is to highlight them, Shift, highlight, and go Command, backspace. Now I've just deleted all those tracks. Without me going through all the shortcuts I like, is to use this information bar, and this is going to show you the shortcuts available. For example, if I hover over this metronome, you can see in the left corner here, it says the shortcut for metronome button is K. So if I'm sitting here on my keyboard recording vocals and I want to click on, I just have to press K and I can turn that on and off. And that's a good way to learn shortcuts. The other good way to learn shortcuts is just in the menu bar here. You can see on the side of everything, there are shortcuts available. If you want to get advanced and create your own shortcuts for workflows that you want to do in Logic, you can do that as well. If you go to Logic Pro, Preferences, Key Commands, and then Edit, this brings up a box where it shows all the key commands that are programmed already in Logic, and then so you can search one that you do often, and maybe it already has a key code for you. For example, let's do something just simple, like if you want to create a marker, this is already a key command. It's Option apostrophe. You can also overwrite this keypad. Some other more beginner-friendly shortcuts that I like here under tip 2 would be holding command and pressing up and down on my keyboard. That's going to make the tracks fatter, which is sometimes easier to see. And then I can also go command down to make them skinnier. And I can go command left to make them squish in. So this is helpful. For example, if you are very zoomed in, you can just quickly be holding command up and command left. And now we have a broad view, kind of bird's eye view of the project. This is the same thing as going over to the top right here and just using these scrollers. Let's move on to tip number 3 now. Using markers, colors, and icons. Every track can have its own color on the side here, but also every region can have its own color. So these are regions and these are tracks on the left here. So if we want to bring up the colors, we would click on a region or whatever we want to color and go Option C. This is going to bring up a color box, and then because this is highlighted, we can choose that to be purple. We can go to our piano, do Option C again, and we can have the piano be blue, and then we can have this vocal to be, this is a hi-hat loop, to be orange. We can keep that color box up there if we want. We can zoom out if we want to color any other regions. We can also be doing this to the tracks themselves. I've just given these tracks some colors. I can click on the track, go to my color box here, and then choose any colors. Typically, you're trying to follow some type of organization scheme. The next thing is track icons. You can see on the left here, these are all vocal tracks, but we have just kind of audio signals here. If we want to switch that, we can right click, and then we can actually put an icon of a male vocalist, female vocalist, a group vocalist, or something else here, for example. If it was a keyboards, we can also put a keyboard. If it was a drum, a kick, we could put a kick. So for this one, I'm just going to put a female vocalist. And then for my hi-hat loop, I'm going to go to drums and then put hi-hats. This next thing inside tip 3 is markers. So I'm going to close colors. I'm going to put my cursor to the left here, and I'm going to open up this drop-down box, and I'm going to see markers here. This marker section allows us to put these little tabs in place wherever we will have our cursor. So this is marker 1. This is marker 2. I could have a marker here. 3. You get what I mean. And then we can double click in and we can name these markers. So let's say that marker 1 was actually intro/verse. Let's say 2 was pre, and then marker 3 was chorus. And just as we learned with colors, we can open up Option C again and choose different colors for our tabs. So our chorus is that teal. We have a purpley for that, and a green for our intro verse. Could also do a Command C for this intro verse because maybe we have a second verse here. And I could go Command C to copy this pre, go here, and I could Command C this chorus and also put it here. Now we have a bit of a structure of a song that we can reference. If we snap this back up, You can see the markers are still there, and it gives us an idea of structure. Let's move on to tip 4 now, which is a quick tip, but a very handy tip that is often used by all producers all the time. This is quickly making copies of regions without using Command C and Command V. Even though that already is a shortcut, it takes time. So let's say I wanted this piano part, because it's in the intro verse, I want this also in the second intro verse. One way to do that is click in Command C, and then I would take my cursor, put it to where I want, and do Command V. That's one way to do it. A much faster way to do it, if I just backspace this, is by holding down Option and then clicking on my left click. Now I have a copy of this, and I can put this wherever I want in the song. I want it right here, so I'm just going to let go, and now I have a copy of that song. Why this is really handy is because not only can we make those quick copies to different sections of the song, but if we wanted to use this chord progression, this MIDI data for a pad or another synth or something, then we can quickly do Command D to open up a copy of this track. So I'm going to open up a copy of this piano track. Now I'm just going to copy this MIDI data by doing this Option hold plus click. Now I have this MIDI data down here, and then I can open up Y to open up my library to choose a different instrument for this track. So for example, I could go to a synth track. Where are my synths here? Synthesizer, pad, and then I could go to a dark pad, for example. Now I have a dark pad playing this exact MIDI data that I could put under the keys. Let's move on to tip number 5 now. We're going to group tracks together to continue to make our song more organized, but also this will help us eventually when we start mixing. So I'm going to clean this session up here. I'm just going to press Y to get rid of the library, and then I'm going to press Command up to zoom out and Command left to get a bigger view. I'm also just going to delete this because I don't need it, and it's extending our session a little much. So I'm just going to backspace this, and then I'm going to zoom out, and you can see here there's a little arrow here. I'm going to click and drag that in. This is our session window, and if we have this back here, this dead space is going to be all used. So I'm going to drag this in all the way to our chorus marker. And now when I zoom in, I'll have a much better view of the project because it's not using that dead space anymore. So we only need to extend this whenever we want to actually use the space in here that we think our song is probably going to end, let's say by bar 21. Okay, then let's have our session be maxed out at 23 here. Now when we zoom in, we can have a much clearer picture of our song. Okay, that was kind of a bonus 4.5 tip. Let's get down to tip number 5. We're grouping tracks together now. So you can see here, I have 4 harmonies here. And just imagine that there are 4 recordings. So I could leave the harmonies like there as 4 separate tracks, but I can also group the tracks together. So I can go up to here, press track, and go to create track stack. There also is a shortcut, Shift Command D. So let's do the shortcut. Let's click out. Go Shift Command D. Now it gives me an options. Do I want to create a folder stack or a summing stack? For this tip, let's just focus on folder stack. A summing stack is eventually something you might want to do. That creates a bus output track for us. And then we can apply an effect on that track, on that bus output track, that will affect all the other tracks within it. So let's just focus on folder stack, create. Now we have this sub 1. We can call it harmonies, and we have a little drop down here and has all our harmony tracks in there. So again, we can go and create a color for that if we want to turn it to pink. Option C, and we just get the color of the pink that we want. So click on this, you can see it's the top right. Okay, click on our harmonies, change it to pink, and we can also change the icons. So now we have a group stack here of all our harmonies, and it's nicely packaged within that. But you'll notice what I was saying was this track called harmonies now only has an option fader. You can see in the inspector window it's quite clean. There's nothing we can do on this track. We can't put reverb on it, we can't put compression on it, delay, anything like that. That's not available in a group track. If you wanted to do that kind of thing, you would have to create a summing stack. Okay, tip 6 now is how we transpose audio very quickly. Let's say that we wrote a song or in the process of writing a song, but we want to shift the key really quickly to see if we can sing over a piano part. Let's use that as an example. So let's say we have this piano here and we want to shift it up a key or down a key or 5 keys, 4 keys, whatever we want. The quick way to transpose audio is by holding down Option and using your up, making sure that the region is highlighted. So click in the region, hold down Option and click up or down. You can see this little number that will appear here. So now I'm transposing up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way. You can go higher and higher and higher. You can also go down, just down 1, down 2, down 3. If you just want to shift it down a full octave or pitch it up a full octave, you can do that really quickly. Instead of doing it like 12 times, like 12, you can also just go, let me go back up to 0, I'll show you how to do that. You can also go Shift Option, down arrow. That's going to go 12 for you. Shift Option, up is going to go 12 up for you. So sometimes I'm doing that quickly, like if I wanted the pad underneath to be lower than the piano, much more bass heavy, because I copied this MIDI data over from that piano, it's going to be in the same octave. So I might go Shift Option down arrow, and now this is a full octave below this. If you don't want to use the shortcut, the other way to do this is clicking in, going to your region editor here, and then going to transpose. And you can click in and you can say transpose 3 up, and that will transpose. It's the same thing. Same thing applies for anything in Logic. If you want to pitch your vocal, if you want to pitch your guitar, if you want to pitch drums, if you want to pitch, it doesn't matter. Using this shortcut will pitch anything. Keep in mind, if you have a song that's complete and you highlight everything and pitch it up or pitch it down, that it can be fine to do a quick test. For example, if you want to sing over something in a lower register. However, if you're going to start using this pitching audio, like if you recorded a guitar, if you recorded your vocal, that's going to start to affect the actual sound of the audio. So another tip to that would be, if you test it out with using this, maybe you sing in a lower register and it's comfortable, you might need to go and re-record some of the instruments you actually recorded. If it's just MIDI data, it should be fine. Tip number 7 is, how do we stretch audio to have it in time with our track? So maybe you brought in a sample from somewhere, or you have something that's just not in time. How do we time stretch it really quickly? I'm going to use this hi-hat loop as an example here. So I'm going to just drag it up so you can see it a bit better. You can see that this is a hi-hat loop I dragged in as a sample. And because I dragged it in as a sample, it already has its own key from the sample. And we are in the tempo of 120. That's the default tempo Logic gave us. So if we were in the tempo of 105, that's what our song is in. Now everything is snapped on the grid to our tempo of 105. So if I wanted this hi-hat loop to work within that tempo, you can see in our grid here we have 4 beats. Sorry, this is 4 beats. The hi-hat loop doesn't fit nicely, right? If we wanted a loop. So then what can we do? Well, we need to time stretch it to the nearest grid, and then we can loop it. So we could push this in to bar 3 at the beginning of bar 3. And how we're going to do that, we have to hover over the end of the region, and we're going to hold down Option. And you can see this little squiggly bracket thingy has come up. Now we're going to click and drag in to bar 3, and then we're going to let go. And now this has time stretched to our tempo of 105. So we can then hover over the end here and now loop it. And now this hi-hat loop is in time. The more you stretch audio, the worse it's going to sound, because it just sounds unnatural. And sometimes you can't, it doesn't even work. So if it's just quickly here and there, like not so far, like from 3 here to there, that's fine and that will work. But if you're trying to stretch audio, like you want to stretch it out all the way to bar 9, that won't even go to bar 10 because it can't stretch the audio anymore. Tip number 8 is saving presets. This is going to save you a lot of time, especially if you're doing your own productions and you really like a lot of effects that you want to reuse. So let's use this lead vocal as an example. Let's open up a reverb effect in our inspector window. We'll go down to reverb and we'll type in a space designer. If we design a reverb in the space designer, for example, Let's even start with a natural preset that Logic gives us. They live under this drop-down window. We can go to a small space, a plate reverb with a vocal plate. Let's say this is a vocal plate lead reverb. But let's say as we're producing our song, we like to increase the size of it. Or we actually want a pre-delay, a bit of pre-delay, and we really want the wetness high. Now we honestly want this reverb as our lead reverb on a lot of songs. Let's save this as our personal own preset. So how do we do this? We go up here to the drop down and we do save as. So it will open up a Finder window and it will default be putting a file inside the Space Designer folder. We need to rename this descriptively. So we'll say my lead vocal verb and save that. Now when we click down and if we want to add a new audio track, let's use the shortcut. So it's Option Command A. Now we have a new audio track. We can go down here in the inspector, add a Space Designer. Now we can just go to the drop down and go to my lead vocal verb. And now we have the exact preset that we saved earlier. This goes the same if you have delay presets, if you have compression presets, if you have EQ presets. Every effect will have this drop down window and you do the same fundamentals. Save as, name it descriptively, and then go back to that effect and you'll find it in this drop down. Tip number 8 is using the Midi editor, the piano roll editor, when you're editing MIDI data. So let's open up. How we get there quickly is double clicking on the Steinway Grand. We can also press E on our keyboards. Two tips I want to mention in the piano roll editor that I find often I'm using are to extend the MIDI notes to all the same length. So for example, these all don't reach the full bar length. If we all wanted every little green thing to go to the end of the bar, all we have to do is highlight them by doing Command A, Shift Option in your left hand, then do highlight and drag, click and drag, and then let go, and now they're all the same length. Another tip is because I actually just drew these notes in by using the pencil tool, because I have the pencil tool in my command tool, I was able to just click Command and then draw notes in. And now I have left click tool. As default, I can click and highlight those. However, when you do that, when you draw MIDI notes in by using the pencil tool, they'll all be at the same velocity. So you can see in my right click tool, I have the velocity tool. Now I can easily right click these and drag down or up to increase the velocity. So you typically, when you have piano, any type of instrument, it's always played with some dynamic. So maybe the first chord is soft, so I would click and drag down and make these blue. Maybe the second chord is a bit harder, so I try to find some dynamic within all the chords that they're all a bit of different colors. You don't want it too random, you want to follow some style of playing. So envision how you would play it. Okay, first soft, second hard, but what matters is you do have the dynamic, and this is a really quick way to do it, is right click, dragging up and down. Tip number 10 is quantization. And a general rule of thumb is when you are playing the MIDI instrument on your keyboard, you can typically quantize by 1/16 and it should work for you. So what this means is, let's say I played this on my MIDI keyboard, which I didn't by the way, but let's just say I did. All the notes would be more or less near the grid because I can kind of play in time. I'm not perfect, but I would say they'd all be something like this. Let's try quantizing by 1/16 and I'll show you what happens. So I do Command A and then I would quantize by 1/16. You can see more or less everything was locked in except these notes here. So if I quantized by 1/8, that should work, because it quantized to the nearest eighth note. If you know what these notes are, you would for sure quantize this example in whole notes because I'm playing whole notes. I'm holding this note for the whole bar. I'm holding this note for the whole bar, this note for the whole bar, this note for the whole bar. So guaranteed quantization would be here is a whole note. But what I'm saying is usually 1/16 works because you're not always playing whole notes. Sometimes you have a melody going. Sometimes you have more things happening. But if you played it, usually 1/16 will just knock that into place from your performance. So I would try, usually I'm always going 1/16, then re-listening to it, and if it didn't lock everything into place, I might adjust it manually by clicking and moving it myself. But that's my beginner tip, is if you don't know these time signatures at all, start with 1/16, have a listen again, and then manually move the notes in place that work with your song. So those are 10 tips. And now I have 2 bonus tips for you if you made it to the end of this video. The first bonus tip would be, if you have slow computer problems or you don't have a lot of memory speed in your computer and you find that Logic is failing a lot, there are a couple things you can do. So the first thing would be, when you are just mixing and using kind of MIDI controllers and not recording, you want to make sure your buffer size is high. So if we open up settings, going Command, comma, and under audio, this is our buffer size here. Because I'm not doing any type of recording now, I have a high buffer size, which means that my computer has to work less hard. When I'm recording, I want to have a lower buffer size, 128 or lower. This means that my computer is going to be working a bit harder, but it's working in a good way that it's going to give you the quality recording, and it's going to reduce the latency that is involved when you speak into the microphone. It goes through the wire and all the way into the computer through your interface. There's a latency there, and so you're telling your computer to work harder to reduce the time it takes from your voice to travel this whole way into the computer. So to increase your computer speed when you're mixing, make sure that buffer speed is high. The other thing you can do, if you're using a lot of software instruments in Logic, you can do this thing which freezes the track. So let's say you have 10 different software instruments, and you might even have some paid plugins. As soon as you start introducing paid plugins, paid software instruments, that's when Logic is really going to have a hard time working if your computer doesn't have a fast processing speed. One thing you can do to help increase the speed is to freeze the tracks. So in order to freeze the tracks, you go to the track you want to freeze. So let's say we have a software instrument here. So we're going to right click and we're going to go to track header components and then to freeze. This is going to bring up a little snowflake on each of the tracks you can see. And now we can just click the snowflake on whatever track we want to freeze. So I'm going to click this snowflake on the Steinway Grand, and I'm going to just press space, and that's going to freeze this track. Essentially what this has done is it's paused any type of effects and plugins. Essentially it's bounced this track into audio. So when we replay this track, there's no processing going on. In the left, you can see it's all shaded out. It's just playing the actual bounced audio. So it requires a lot less processing speed on your computer. Now, keep in mind, if you're mixing and you want to be going back and forth into the effects and the instruments and the plugins, like on the left in the inspector window, freezing isn't going to be a great option for you, because you'll have to obviously be unfreezing, freezing, unfreezing, freezing, and that's just annoying. So freezing is great maybe when you've committed to that sound, you can freeze it, and that's going to help your processing speed as you play through your song the next time. The second bonus tip is to use the region editor. So when you have, every region has its own kind of metadata to it. So this region editor is up here at the top left. This hat loop has its own little data here. So inside this region editor, we can do a lot of things. We can, for example, on this lead vocal, we can mute it, we can loop it, we can transpose it by clicking in. Another quick tip here is click in and drag down, or click in and drag up, and that's going to help you transpose quickly. We can fine tune it, we can use flex time, we can use gain, which is something I'm doing a lot. If I just think the lead vocal needs a bit more gain in a certain area, one quick way to do it is using the region editor. So let's say I only think this little first bit is low in gain, and I need to increase that gain. What I would do is I right click and cut that, because I have my scissor tool on my right click. This now has its own region and its own data. I can go to gain here, click in and drag up to increase the gain. You can see the signal actually growing as I drag up. But if I thought it was too loud, I could also decrease the gain. On the drop down in the region editor, there's also a lot more stuff. We can fade in here, clicking up, clicking out. We can see that we've applied a fade here in the region. You can see it on the end, and you can see it at the beginning. And then we can put a curve on the fade if we want. We can reverse this region by clicking this, and we've actually completely flipped and reversed that signal. If these Logic Pro tips helped you, please feel free to subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video.